All right. We are live. It's January 31st. January is already gone. There are 11 months left in 2024. It's going too fast for me. We have a great guest today. But before we get going with our digital roundtable edition of January 31st, let's have our own John Sibley Butler play some music.
When the evening sun goes down, you will find me hanging around. Nightlife, it ain't no good life, but it's my life. Many people are just like me, hanging on to old used to be. Oh, the nightlife, it ain't no good life, but it's my life.
Woo, woo, woo. All right, John Butler. John
How you doing?
Butler, we're back. It's January 31st. We have I'm feeling the mojo of the new year innovation, the CNBC Disruptive 50. I'm sure you're working on that for the next program. The economy, the wars. I guess there's a fourth war in the making. What's going on, John Butler?
Well, I've been listening to Llewellyn hang out with the Secretary of Energy, which is kind of frightening. But I know that he's been hanging out with him. I've been trying to keep up with him. Hey, but the world is a mess. But, we have seen the world a mess before. Here's the question. It's not that there are wars. And it's not that there's an energy crisis. And it's not that there are lots of problems. The question is, do we have the tenacity and the will to deal with those problems?
Mm-hmm.
People have nowhere else to go. If the world falls apart, if America falls apart, there's no country for us to run to.
Right.
What we have to do is concentrate on. Let me just address some of those that's been close to me. One, of course, is the immigration issue in Texas, which has been here since the beginning of the state. Of course, it has been blown, but it's a reality. And I think that the people there just see it as a natural border. When I go down to the valley, to Brownsville, people go across and over the border. They have friends, they have family, they have parties over and back. But it is a problem. It has become a problem. It's become a problem because of the migration and people sending them, the governor of the great state of Texas, sending them to the different parts of the country. It's a problem because it is all over the news, and it's a problem because it is a great humanitarian problem. Nobody likes to see individuals like that. When you look at the war in Israel, I think it's just beginning. I think that the Romans had a great saying. If you go back to the Roman philosophy, when you occupy somebody's land, then you must either convert them or you must kill them all. If not, it would be problems from now on. So we're going to have to deal with that. The economy seems to be booming. The stock market is booming. In Texas, at least, jobs are out of control, and the employment rate is doing very, very good. The in-migration is very, very strong coming here. The out-migration, of course, to other countries is strong. So remember, we've had a civil war, but we dealt with it. We have an energy crisis, but we dealt with it. We had immigration, but we dealt with it in New York by building Ellis Island. It's not just immigration. It is illegal immigration. And not from Mexico, by the way, from around the globe. So what makes Americans go is the economy doing well. And not only do we have the difference in equality, I saw the Senate take Zuckerberg through the through the mill, blaming his company for everything from child abuse and et cetera. He was a kid that started a company in college and it grew. But the question is, can we solve those problems? Do we have the technology to solve it? I mean, shall we create other kinds of cities in America for new immigrants? So these are the things that's on us. And of course, we've got the technology as we move into new cities and technological cities and smart cities. All of these things are happening at the same time. It must have been like the convergence of radio, immigration, and then television, Korean War. But the big theoretical question is, do we have the leadership? Do we have the military? And do we have the knowledge and know-how to solve these problems?
Good points, good points. Llewellyn, what say you?
Well, I'm not as optimistic as Johnny is. He's looking at it from an economic point of view, and right at the moment, the economy, at least as reflected by Wall Street, is doing extraordinarily well. In fact, it's we were supposed to be having a soft landing, and we're having we're no landing at all. We're in full flight. But that is often a dubious situation because stock markets get it right and wrong. They got it wrong before most of the wars. They got it wrong before the big crash of 2008. And when the Brazilian economy some years ago was in one of its many free falls, its stock market was booming. So don't take the stock market as a total way of measuring an economy. It is a part of it, and it reflects a lot of money which is looking to improve itself. Money is like human beings. It wants to make more. It doesn't sit still. And the stock market is still the best place to put it. But that does mean that it can send out false readings from time to time. We have a lot of problems, and this is going to be a very, very difficult year. And it's going to affect everyone. The first one is the climate is an unknown. If we have a climate catastrophe, either if it continues with excessive rain or excessive heat as we had last year, this will begin to affect things. You can't do that. I think Phoenix had 54 days of above 110 degrees. Well, that's going to have an effect. It's going to have an effect on agricultural production. It's going to have an effect on people, how they live. Will become sort of a different kind of troglodyte, troglodytes that have to stay in the air conditioning. People can't work outside in temperatures like that, or not for very long, and not very many of them. So productivity will be affected. We are running into a potential energy shortage this summer. Electricity, that is, not raw energy, but refined energy, electricity, with huge demands from the air conditioning load, from the automation load, and coming a big surge from artificial intelligence as it spreads through the economy. Now, the upsides here are artificial intelligence will bring a large increase in productivity, maybe one of the largest jumps in productivity ever seen. The downside is that there'll be a vast rearrangement of jobs, where people work, what they do, and some will not find work because they have skills which will not be desired in this new AI-driven economy. Things like 3D printing, more correctly called additive manufacturing, will be enormously enhanced by AI. And the limit will be on materials, not on the intellectual dimension of the product. So that's a bright spot, but it has problems associated with it. Internationally, it is a very unstable world. We have Russia hoping to prevail in Ukraine, primarily hoping to prevail because the West will tire of the struggle. We'll get a kind of donor fatigue. Already the Congress is balking. Conservatives in the Congress, very odd that conservatives should favor Russia, but that's where we're at now. And particularly as the Russia they are favoring is in many ways the reconstituted Soviet Union, but that's what we have there. A very uncertain future. The Middle East is a hair from a very large conflagration. We have players all allegedly financed by Iran, and anybody who takes up arms against Israel and therefore peripherally against the United States is assumed to be an Iranian surrogate. If that is in fact true, at some point the pressure domestically, and you're already hearing it out of the Congress, to take action directly against Iran increases. Also, Israel, which is going through a terrible time, it is in the middle of a war and it doesn't like its own government. Not a good mixture. But they may take some preemptive action against Iran, which would plunge us into a very large war. Meanwhile, China is sitting and waiting for the time when it thinks it's opportunity to invade and repossess Taiwan. So you've got a, witch's brew out there of possibilities, all of which may hopefully not come to pass. But some conclusion has to come to the Ukrainian war at some time. Some rebuilding of Gaza has to begin at some time. It cannot remain in a state of permanent war. Already 26,000 lives have been lost and God knows how many maimed. It is a pretty ugly situation. We are very fortunate in the United States. I'm inclined to think we're going to see quite a substantial population shift. We're already seeing it here in Rhode Island, where people are moving here from the Southwest because of the heat. Now, this may not be a mass migration at this point in time, but there are indicators that it could happen, that people one day will say, I don't want to live half of the rest of my life in air conditioning, and will seek a cooler climate. Much is up in the air. So I love Johnny's optimism, but I don't share it.
Right. All right. Well, to help set frame from your all thoughts on the macro level, I was reading a report recently on from a company called Research and Markets it was actually released on the 29th about the top 7 growth opportunities for smart buildings. So number 1 is, and I just posted them for everybody to read, digitalized management to drive development of intelligent buildings. Second, adoption of advanced building maintenance solutions to gain momentum. Health and wellness solutions to enhance occupant experience. Advanced building controls to support energy efficient sustainability targets. Digital twin to enhance building operations and management. New business models to accelerate transformation of smart buildings. And cybersecurity solutions to enhance and protect smart building systems. Now, our guest today is an expert on this, and he's probably listening to me talk about a report that was published yesterday about an epiphany, and he would say, this has been going on for 30 years. So, Alper Uzmezler, how are you, sir? What can you say about what's going on in your world?
I'm doing good. I'm doing much better from post-COVID world. It is the world is bleak. I'm involved in smart buildings, and all the things that are happening all over the world is affecting the technology as well. And I hope that the world was a better place after COVID, but there has been some things. And as far as the smart buildings world, it is changing, but there are things that are affecting it as far as the assets being in delinquency on payments, and the people are not moving back to the buildings as fast enough after COVID. So there's a lot of things to talk about for sure.
Let me ask you this. I was looking at your space. What do you think is the best business model that I like to talk about for smart cities? That is, when I say business models, it's going to be for the people who own the smart building and also for the cities where the smart buildings are. How do you see a city literally making money either by saving, right, with smart building business? So if you walked into a city hall, you want to speak to the city government, you would say, I want to make all of the business smart for these reasons, and it would benefit both your city and your population.
I think the best building in the near future would be the ones that is most interconnected with the grid. And we know that we are changing our grid infrastructure with EVs as well. So a building that knows internally in a micro level, the internal air comfort, IAQs, energy usage monitoring, and knows the efficiencies on implements the efficiencies with demand response, but also knows the assets that are on the building as well, as far as solar goes or battery goes or EVs are in consideration. So I think a building that is the most important would be the one that is most interconnected with the grid, because the grid is changing right now as well.
So in other words, I would be able to predict or know right away when something goes out. I would know right away when batteries go out. I would know right away when the quote assets of the buildings go out. I would know right away when there's a fire, and the building would know also. So therefore, the business model is that you have the city has the opportunity for safe building. So it's a safety model in the sense that if the building knows, then it can let the city know right away, or its ownership know right away. So that's one thing, and I think that's for the general population. Let us say that I go to the city council and say, look, here are all the things that I just mentioned, but there's one more thing about the data that it produces. Tell me about the data that it produces. Where do you think the data would be on the open market in the future, not necessarily now? And how that data could have a I don't know, a Facebook model where people would be interested in the data produced by smart buildings in the aggregate,
Yes,
the sum total, and also at the individual business or building level.
so the data is a touchy subject, right? Because within data, there you can come out with outcomes that could hurt those facilities or that the company owners or the stake owners. So the data has to be, in order to get to a level like Facebook, like Open Graph kind of thing, the data would have to be anonymized to be able to use by the mass public. I don't see that it will happen anytime soon unless there's an intervention from a government to get all that data out there with some kind of anonymization. The data is important. That is like the new oil as far as buildings goes. And it is really important that we utilize it. And in individual buildings, we do work with analytics software that actually semantically data models the building, that semantically data modeling any data that is coming from assets is very important to get to the level technically, but politically and business sense, we do need a government intervention to get that data anonymously to the public.
So right now you can't say that the data that's produced by a smart building at Second and Congress, it might produce the average temperature, the average number of people who walk by, all of the people who walk into it, the number of stores that's in the building, the receipts of the number of stores. So that data right now cannot be utilized and sold to marketing people or people with products. So if
there are some standards for that called Energy Star, but I don't think it is enough for us to move into the next level. We need more metadata within those within from the buildings, more granular data. But we are doing that for analytics internally per customer basis, but it is not available to mass or to the public.
So in other words, if every building in Austin, Texas were smart, I could aggregate that data, and then I can create a data set, and then I can select if it's a grocery store. I can select if it's a hardware store. I can select if it's a pharmacy, right? Then I can see where that store is, and then I can tell the people who are trying to move here, or indeed the people who sell Colgate or any kind of toothpaste, that this grocery store is better because the number of people, the climate, and etc. Can we do that now, Alper?
Not in a sense that you want it to be. Yeah, it is
Okay.
that kind of granular data is not available to the public because one company is in competition with the other company. When if that data goes out, they would know that company's operative behavior from the data, which is the problem.
Okay, I was thinking about a mass database. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's define our terms here a little bit. We've been talking about buildings as though they're all the same, but of course there are two classes of building. There are residential buildings, apartments, and there are office spaces, which are majority, and of course there are manufacturing spaces, and there are housing of goods spaces, warehouses. Where is the slowdown? Is it in the office spaces, or is it across the whole list of buildings?
Mostly office spaces, because after COVID, we started working from homes, and the balance have shifted against to the buildings, and C and D type buildings are hurting the most. A is able to lower the prices and get more customers in, but the C and D is really hurting right now.
C and D are the low end of the building
Class.
inventory.
Yes.
Okay, it's not a term I'm familiar with, but it's fairly intuitive. When we look at residential buildings, surely that is a place where you have stability. There's a housing shortage, so there aren't a lot of empty apartments. Isn't that a good place to make inroads and smarten those up? And I'm wondering, do they get smartened by the owner of the building or the individual occupant? For example, if you're creating a demand-side management structure, is it each apartment that would manage the electric supply, or would it be the building operating collectively?
Well, there are some technologies on the apartment space, and there's also new technologies that are coming out, like wireless LoRaWAN sensors and thermostats. They were doing demand response on apartment space with Nest directly going to the cloud. I'm not in the apartment space in full. I'm more on the commercial and industrial space. I cannot talk about the apartment space in full, but there are new technologies that are coming out that could be utilized to do demand response for apartments in the future, with more interconnectivity with the apartment, the people who live within the apartments. So
it would seem that the enormous amount of overbuilt office space, and I'm assuming it is overbuilt because the demand no longer is there, is going to be a tremendous burden on cities. Not only will they not get the taxes they're accustomed to,
yes.
Somebody has to maintain them. A half-empty building uses just about as much basic services as a filled one, I would assume. You still have to keep the water flowing, the sewage operational, the electricity on, and the structure in good repair. What is going to happen in the cities? This would seem to me to be a great burden for particularly very dense cities like New York, Chicago, where you've got a lot of high rises and where there was an endless appetite for high-rise buildings. And even across Texas, I've seen in the many decades that I've been visiting Texas, just enormous construction of office buildings, whether it's in Houston or where Andres is in Austin.
Yeah, I think the cities will have to make their own research and find when the equilibrium of having taxes collected from commercial space buildings is coming down to a level where it would benefit them to ease the policies to turn them into mixed living. And there's also problems converting an office space to a mixed living as well, as far as policies are concerned. But they will have to find that equilibrium when it goes below the threshold. They will have to make those policies.
So a few data points real quick. There was an article that just came out. So downtown Austin has a bunch of new towers. There's some more cranes and towers going up. So there is a building that Google built from scratch. It looks like a sail of a ship.
Mhm.
It's gigantic, gorgeous. It's 100% empty. Google is not moving in. There's the tallest tower in Austin just got finished. It was owned by Meta as a tenant. It was just announced that Meta, the Facebook owner, Instagram owner, Zuckerberg's company, is not moving in the building. They're subletting the building to multiple offices. They're not coming back to the building.
It is a changing environment, and I think within a changing environment, there's also opportunity to make a change as well. So it kind of excites me over that as far as technology goes.
Well, I'm sorry, sorry.
Go.
You talked about how the building was connected to the grid. Let's talk about what's happening behind the meter, and let's see how you're gonna, if you will, interact with the regular grid. People are working on the whole idea now that the things that's behind the meter, whether it's your home or whether your business, might be just as important as other things. So certainly the smart building is behind the meter. What's the technologies when you say that you want to interact with the grid? What are the technologies that are necessary, and what do you want to do with the grid? Is it simply?
Well, I can talk directly about protocols. One of the protocol is OpenADR, having the building communicate with OpenADR if the grid is communicating and utilizing it. If they're not utilizing it, what are they utilizing for? Demand response would be one. The second part is what is installed in the assets and facilities, and one of them is the car charging stations. And for car charging stations, there is protocol called OCPP, and that is also another monster-like protocol. There are standards for buildings that this is not the grid side. This is inside the building side. Indoor air quality. There is VAL reset standards. That would basically make sure that indoor air quality is good within the building. But on the grid side, what I would think is the things that are connected to the building, solar panels and batteries. I would definitely read the data from those. Probably it will be Modbus protocol coming from the meters or the battery packs, OCPP car chargers, and OpenADR for demand response.
So do you see, for example, a city, much like we do with on the residential side or the automobile side, do you see a building where the energy would go back on the grid, the grid, which is going to go one way, basically? Do you see what's the technology that will allow a great smart building to put its energy back on the grid for use by everybody, or indeed sell its energy? Do you talk about that technology?
I think Andres would answer that better. I'm not. I'm on the consumption side, but I think to keep the grid stable, I'm sure I'm sure he agrees with it. We will have to stabilize the grid, and probably the EVs are going to be one of the tools that we will have in the future. Are we there yet? I don't think we are there yet, but it is. I know that it is being worked on to deplete the batteries as well.
Yeah. So you
I
need.
don't know if EVs are going to make it. I have my.
You need, Johnny, real quick. We need a proliferation of energy storage technologies in the buildings. We have had them, lead acid batteries and what have you. And the thing about all that is weight and density and cost, right? So, but in order for the buildings to play an active role in a two-way grid, you need a buffering system to maintain and not harm the 60 hertz balance of the grid. So energy storage, batteries, are the best mechanism for that as it relates to, you know, dealing with either local generation, solar rooftop, anything else, people riding bikes, generating electricity in the building, and the demand and the switch of the outlet on the demand from a hair dryer or a dry cleaning thing to regular consumption that is flat. So all that sort of dynamic up and down needs to be smooth. And the only way to smooth it is with energy storage as a buffer between the grid and the asset.
Okay. So therefore, Alper, the greatest improvement for buildings in the smart city is the knowledge and know-how that the building actually has to present to the people to prevent systematic problems. Is that a good statement?
That is correct. And I think the way if we are going into a distributed grid where we have different sources, I think the building side would have to have a distributed computing and distributed data holding as well. And that's what I've been putting my life pretty much on hold and focusing on this part for the last 7-8 years. And it is basically the where we need to be is distributed computing with data.
Okay. Well, yeah, and that'll be good for the city, good for the owners. And Llewellyn's point is, well, what do you do with all of these smart buildings? And you said, and I wrote it down. You said there are lots of problems in converting a regular office building to apartments. You know, much like the iron building has done in New York. It's been converted. You know, it looks like an iron. You know. So what's the major problem that you see if you were to build a regular office building that's smart, and then I need to convert it to condos?
It is basically the rules and systems that are in place for the buildings, and there are certain requirements for apartment space, which is basically how many windows they have to have. For circadian rhythm, they have to have daylight entering into apartments. So the commercial space is not built upon those requirements. So we will have to use technology to basically accommodate those. Maybe to get the circadian rhythm lights, we need to build lighting ducts coming all the way into the office space being converted to residential. Indoor air quality is another issue because commercial space is not built with ventilation in it. So you have to add the ventilation for the kitchen space as well. And there's a lot of requirements. Some of them might need to be laxed from the state so that the prices would come down, but it will be state to state, city to city decision.
Yeah, you know what I find amazing from the sociological point of view and psychological point of view and health point of view is that companies over the last 30 years or so are really concentrating on creating a great workplace for their workers. Everything from exercise rooms, everything from exercise to eating places, eating right, telling workers to eat right because they want to reduce, of course, the probability of getting sick so that they can continue to come to work. Now, with the movement of people working from home, I have an interesting feeling that tells me it's going to increase and make health problems worse. I have something telling me that the efficiency of enterprises will suffer. And more importantly, when I need that great promotion or somebody retires, I don't know anybody. And we all know the importance of networking and smoothing around the around the office. I think one of your biggest arguments would be with this, and I'm not certain yet, but going back to work is good for the health of Americans. It's good for the companies in America and what they do. And it's just good for everything because when I'm at home, I'm just a different animal. I mean, you know, I taught from home for a long time. And then I had my students, I would say, where are you guys located during the pandemic? Well, I am in Paris, you know, I'm in Puerto Rico. They just log on from all over the world. So what do you think about that argument? Do you think that moving away from the smart buildings and all of the assets of New York City to home would make the American workers or any city worse in the next 10 to 15 years? Just an hypothesis that the old professor has.
Well, I've been working from a home space building technology, so I'm kind of biased on that. I think the hybrid is not a bad model. We are just learning. The companies are just learning and adapting to it. If we can manage it, I think we will be more productive. There's definitely a space needed for people to connect, because we are social animals at the end of the day, and we want to feel accepted and connected together for a common goal. I don't think a company can pass in that common goal over just Zoom, because we are working so hard to understand what the other person is trying to say through this two-dimensional screen. For that being said, a common workplace is needed with a FOMO, which is FOMO stands for fear of missing out, where an environment where people are not being forced to go there, but they want to go there, is going to be crucial. And, you know, 2-3 day periods where they're productive alone, and they go to the office space where they get excited and what to do next, and they are feeling achieved or for a common goal. I do believe that hybrid system will work in the long run.
Well, let me give you an alternative view, and I really would like Llewellyn's comment on this, because he's seen it all. Okay, so I own an engineering firm, I own a law firm. And in America, it costs $180,000 to hire an engineer. In another country, it costs $60,000 to hire an engineer. We're all connected, so why should I hire? I mean, to bring the greatest amount of return to my shareholders. Why not, as companies did before? You know, when you call in for a helpline, the person might be in Ireland, or they might be in India. You know, they might be somewhere else. So why can't I just make my workforce a global workforce? And instead of paying $200,000 for an engineer in America, I'll just pay $70,000 for an engineer, you know, in Nigeria. What is that good for Americans? And I would like to get my distinguished historian. He doesn't know he's a historian, Llewellyn King, who's seen it all and done it all. He saw people run to the suburbs. He saw people run back. He saw the separation of workplace and residence, and now we're going back. I would like to know, Llewellyn, would you like for me to hire anybody from around the world based on the price, just like we do when we took the price of goods and labor across the world?
Well, the answer is that if they are economically attractive, that's what will happen. It is just another part of the cheap labor. And if the labor in this instance is an engineer, and there are an awful lot of engineers being turned out, say, in India, but a good engineers, very, very well educated, and you can use them. The thing, though, is exactly what Alper said. We are social animals. And to what extent can we really reverse that, which we're asking to do? For most of us, most of our lives have been concentrated in our work. We've met our friends at work. We've often met our lovers at work. Work in the office or the workplace, and even necessarily, it can be a factory, it can be a retailer, but the workplace has been very, very critical to the well-being of the individual. And
Yes.
If we hate where we work, it's often because we hate it socially just as much as we might not enjoy the labor. And I think that's a strong component, and I think people will start coming back to work. I think in the sense that I don't know how it's going to work, but Alper is right that there will be a mixed use. We had an architect friend over for dinner a couple of weeks ago, and he is a principal in a large local engineering architecture firm. And he said that he found productivity was lower with people working from home, and they were looking at ways to try to bring them back. And so far, it seems 2 or 3 days a week is the optimum solution. And I think Alper was quite right, because you carry some of the energy from work home for those 2 days or 3 days even. But if you're at home all the time, that energy dissipates. And we constantly measure ourselves against other people and our contributions and our interactions. And also the terribly important thing is the flow of information. The so-called conversations at the water cooler or in the coffee shop. These are terribly important. And if we don't have them, we're going to lose something. I think we're losing it now. We are fundamentally social beings. And for all the history that we have since the inception of the Industrial Revolution and before, we have gone to work as part of the human experience. Now we're saying, don't go to work, do it at home. And also, temperamentally, people are not all suited to working at home. But I'd like to ask Alper to tell me more about himself and his company.
All right, there we go.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Alper.
Okay, so my goal is I have 2 companies. One of them is BASSG, that is a distribution for smart building products, and the other one is Anka. It is basically a startup, but the idea of it is that it is a laboratory, and I started before COVID, and COVID hit, and we started with the conversation today. Mr. Butler talked about the world politics and world politics and what is happening within the world also affects technology as well. And chip shortage crisis was a major slowdown for my ambitions. And what I created is world's first hardware agnostic controls engine. And I open sourced it thinking that hardware manufacturers throughout the globe would basically implement it, but they wouldn't implement it because there was no chips to be installed into to be found. I mean, car manufacturers were not able to build cars, yet I will have low cost hardware devices like these. They were nowhere to be found. So at this point, we are getting better after post-COVID, and I'm basically implementing, to speed things up, I'm implementing Sandstar Foundation to open source and make everything source available to have distributed computing within smart buildings.
That's very good. So
where are you based, Alper?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
You're in Austin as well.
Yes.
And interesting, you've got a lot of new buildings there. Are they going to be occupied?
I don't know. I'm not on the commercial real estate. I listen to them, but it will be a wild ride within the next 2 years, I think.
Are there technological solutions in sight as part of the evolutionary process, which will help buildings along towards your goal of making them more efficient and more of a contributor to the well-being of a society and of a city?
Definitely the improvements in machine learning and AI and the procedures within AI and deep learning might get easily into smart buildings. I'm working towards one goal within there, but I think the scalability of things is really difficult as far as there's large 5 companies within the smart building space. And just like Elon Musk was talking about Tesla and how many cars he has to build to break even, we don't have that kind of investment in smart building clean tech space. within smart buildings. So because of these large 5 conglomerate companies that are not allowing any new companies to enter into the play, for that reason, I'm going basically open source and source available version, so I can take the time and shrink the time of adoption.
Thank you. And last question, more of a comment, really. I was so glad you said there is a problem in converting office space because of the internals. You do not have natural light. And I note that in New York City, at least one building has been converted, but they've got what they call the void, which is a huge open space in the middle, sealed off, nothing in it, nothing happening, in order to overcome the need for window space.
Yes.
So as I said earlier, I wanted to share a couple things. You know, I think personally that business productivity would probably go up if we get serious about shortening the working week to 4 days, making each day 10-hour days, and just having more, you know, what I would call, you know, synergy in what's really happening, and helping the homeowner and the family enjoy, you know, and sharing in 3 days of being at home, and the socialized elements of that for building community. And similarly, I think that, you know, the one thing that I want to talk about that sort of relates to that more around where the world is going, which in many ways Alper is an author and a net creator, is what I call device resource management. So we know about customer resource management, CRM, from Salesforce.com and Siebel Systems and companies that created the category about how software can help companies, you know, sell products to customers. And so the whole practice of managing that interaction is called, you know, customer relationship management. But I keep thinking that we're going to move to more sensors, more devices, more gateways, more things, and then machine to machine talking to each other. Alper, I don't know if you ever thought about it. You can run with it. I published this concept in LinkedIn, you know, and it's, you know, public domain, but, you know, I get attributed with it. But you have been building, you know, an ecosystem of solutions to enable device relationship management.
Yeah, I think you can put it that way. And what I've been using is a project called Project Haystack. It's basically the semantic data model, and you can the model basically gives you your what the devices mean, what they have, how much points they have, do they have live data, historical data. If it has historical data, how much historical it has, where it is located, how it has been running. So you can ask it any question in a semantic data model way, and that data can be linked to business processes. It can be linked to operational management. It can be linked to indoor quality, demand response. So that is what we are basing most of our technology onto Project ASAC.
Got it. Johnny?
Yeah, what can you say a little bit more about that management system that you just talked about? You're just linking the data to the managers themselves. Tell me about the relationship management there electronically.
Well, again, you know, it's really encapsulating, you know, an acronym. You know, I love creating acronyms so people can, you know, from smart grid to other things. But to me, device relationship management, it's really the outcome of what Alper and many other gurus in the industry have been pushing for a long time. You know, Honeywell, Siemens, all these companies trying to do control devices and in an infrastructure. But But when we think about data and the use of the data and the decision making on this, sort of analog facilities, buildings, and so on, right? As they become intelligent because you put sensors and the gateways that Alper makes and all these things together and talk, then the asset itself with AI potentially could have its own. You basically talk to your voice activated Alexa. You say, Alexa, I want the building to save $100,000 this year. And
Okay,
then,
got it.
and then Alexa will go and talk to all the devices that Alper makes, and Alper's devices will start having their own, self-learning algorithms going on, and then they'll tell the furnace do this, the HVAC do that, the whatever do this, the elevator do that, right?
I got it. I understand, and you can do it. I got it. That's no problem. I had, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I want to do indeed bring up AI and smart buildings. And when we think about AI, we know that it's just the data now that we have that is living off of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And right now, your data are not shared in the public domain necessarily for smart buildings, right? So how would this affect the ability of AI to talk about smart buildings when I ask about smart buildings, if it's not the data are not in the public domain?
Yeah, I mean, the data is being implemented. These semantic data models are being implemented building by building basis. And I think it is also a good thing as far as you containing your data for security reasons as well. And AI, machine learning, and subsets of the deep learning is being implemented today for different things like for PID loop improvements, predicting energy usage based on different parameters. These are already being done, but on a building facility basis.
Okay. Well, let me just say this. I think that we have not, in the academic world, we have not really integrated the models of smart buildings into the overall structure of the economy and the economy. We've talked a lot about smart cars and smart cities. Of course, that's encompassed in what we call smart cities. So, I'm thinking, Alper, that the whole business models of cities will just change drastically in the coming decade, the continuation, if you will, of this decade and this century. And the ultimate question is, what kind of jobs? And I like to say every time we have a technology, new jobs are created. Besides data analysts, what kind of jobs are created that you see being created? Again, I'm thinking about selling this concept to cities. My whole idea is to walk in front of a city council and say, this is why your city should be smart. Am I going to increase the number of electricians? Am I going to increase the number of computers that's needed? Am I going to increase the number of experts to keep these alive? That's my whole deal. So what kind of jobs are created? And you can jump forward 10 to 15 years. How will the workforce change with the model?
Wow, it is a deep question, and I have thought about this deeply, actually. Smart buildings industry is a multidiscipline industry, and not one person can be an expert of the other things. It starts with modeling the building of energy usage based on where it is built, how it is built. Then we have the controls side of the mechanical side of what kind of mechanical system installed at that given year technology. Then we have a control side. Then we have data modeling, data abstraction, standardization side. Then we have graphics, and then we have networking, and then we are adding AI and machine learning now. So the problem is, the way I see the problem is, when you have a multidiscipline, multi-moving system, is how do we get people to work together more coherent way, where the person that modeled the building can talk to the graphics guy all the way down to the AI person. And the way to achieve that is that we need to train new kind of workforce And there are some universities in US that is basically they built their own controllers like these. And one of my goal is before I retire, I want to be able to get students to build hardware like this, install the open source SandStar in it, install a software that does analytics, install and also bring the AI and machine learning students where they work together. They just we need to have a new idea of workforce where they are easily able to communicate with each other for a common goal. And it's
Yes,
not
that
here
was
right now.
Apple's. Yes, sir. That was Apple's problem, and they went back to what we call the core disciplines. So Alper's really a liberal arts combined engineering company. And they went to the, mathematics majors, science majors, biology majors, chemistry majors, because we know that science, that new business model start with science and technology, right? And then the business people come in and say, how can we commercialize this science?
Yes.
So you might want to take a look at what Apple did when they had the same kind of problem that you had. That is, how do you bring people together? Whether it's a history major, whether it's somebody majoring in journalism or somebody majoring in biology. But I think business history to me is the most important major when it comes to vision. That was a good question. I'm glad you're thinking about that, because people are going to always ask myself and Andreas, okay, we're going to do this technology. Tell me about the workforce. What would it have in the workforce? So you perceive that there will be jobs. We just have to retrain the people. And remember, the purpose of education is to teach you how to think so that you can retrain yourself, right? So if you understand music theory, you can play guitar, you can play piano, you can play violin, you can play it all. And that's good. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Llewellyn, any thoughts?
No, I think that it's going to be very challenging with these overbuilt cities going forward. I don't see any quick fix, and I don't think we're going to convert very many office buildings to very durable condominium space, because the fundamental structure is what I have been told, and I'm sure Alper could contradict me on this, but that it's actually cheaper to knock down a building and build an apartment building for that purpose than to convert an office building, particularly one that is very tall, as in New York. The higher they go, the harder the conversion. And the question is, who really wants to live and be dependent on elevators at great height? That's another question. In New York, they solved it by initially by having wonderful penthouses up in the clouds for ultra rich people. But ordinary families, for example, with children, don't necessarily want to be 60, 70 floors up in the sky, and the reliance on the electric supply and the elevator. I think cities are going to wake up in the next year and a half or so and find out that the future is going to be very different from the past, and that the old nostrums don't work, and that some entirely new concepts of how we're going to organize our cities and live in them, and in fact, possibly rebuild some parts of them. It's a very challenging issue and interesting one, but it's here, and it's not going away in a hurry.
Alper, do you see in the commercial, manufacturing business buildings, do you have customers saying, look, we are going to put a program together to harness the electric vehicles that we have, and they're going to be an integral part of the building going forward, and we want to control them, X, Y, and Z. We want to be proactive about it. Is that happening in anywhere, shape, or form anywhere?
For industrial, you said?
For any customer segment.
Well, I mean, we know that there are companies that are converting their fleets to electrical and trying to manage their fleets. Do they understand the complexities of each EV charger, what the protocols are behind, and what the deficiencies when you're charging multiple cars at the same time? And I think we have a lot of education to do as far as what these systems are and managing them. I think we are at early infancies on these things as far as batteries are concerned too, like battery temperature versus how many cars are on there, how many amperages are available from the breaker level and the limits on it, and scheduling these. So there are things happening, but we have a lot more education to do to the facility managers.
Early stage still.
Early stages, I think. Yeah.
So it's really interesting to hear you talk. So I'm looking at the time here, and I'm trying to perhaps try to do a wrap up for you. But tell us real quick what's in front of you the next 6 months. I know that there are conferences and things, and you're always speaking out there. And what's in front of you? What are the next things going on at BAS and Anka Lab?
Yeah, the next thing is creation of Sandstar Foundation is going to be that. And we already have Sandstar open source, but we're going to have all of our tooling and apps that are wrapped around Haystack will be source available to hardware manufacturers, and talking to hardware manufacturers to have a hardware agnostic distributed computing model where it is for the first time being done in universe, so that we can get closer to AI more openly and more freely. So that is my next goal within the next 6 months.
Okay.
And talk about that at events.
Okay. Gentlemen, closing thoughts, parting thoughts, John?
I think you're the future, and remember, everybody wants to connect to the grid. The grid becomes the new highway for business and for pleasure. And the grid has got to be up and running and doing well, and there's a lot to do on the grid.
Well, that's interesting. My own thought is that maybe we're moving away from the grid, and we're going to see more versions of micro systems that can disengage from the grid because of the vulnerability of the grid and the inherent complexity of this great vulnerable linear system. And then we'll see as much self-generating in various ways as technology allows. It is going to be a very difficult time for electric supply, and a very interesting but difficult world that Alper that you're in, because the challenges are multiple and the answers are few. And I wish you the best of luck.
All right. Well, thank you, Alper, for being with us today. We will stay in touch. We'll bring you back from time to time. Digital 360 Summit in September is being planned out. Hope to have you there. Always good to see you. John Sibley Butler, take us away.
Let's fly down or drive down to New Orleans. That city is pretty, historic scenes. And I'll take you, parade you down the street. See a lot of big shots, do a lot of good shots down on Bourbon Street.
Beautiful. Let's have some beignets and some coffee. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Llewellyn, nice seeing you. I enjoyed your column today. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.